You mentioned some good points there. Yeah, you do want to make sure that they still get a good deal, and that's, you want to be cautious of how much you're actually trying to renegotiate. And as you mentioned, if it's a killer deal and you're going to make a whole bunch of money the second you close on it, it might not be worth bringing those things up. But it depends, right? If it's the roof and it's going to cost you 40, $50,000 or more, then that's going to be a little hard for you to have to pull out of your pocket. And so renegotiating there could be important. Kind of expanding off of deal killers, we kind of move into making deals. And Mike talks about this all the time, which is, kind of shy away from, when you look at a property, having that question in your head, which is this a deal? Yes or no? And kind of shifting that into what would make this a deal. And so I'm curious what you have to, or what you could share about some different things that you could look for to actually, this isn't a deal, but what would make this a deal? And have you ever come across a scenario where you've done this and it ended up working out? Maybe you just got creative with it.
Yeah, for me, it goes back to the seller financing. I was able to make two deals, make it a deal with two deals, just by doing 0% interest. I mean, that's kind of a no-brainer, 0% interest. But yeah, terms is a big thing. So, seller financing to me plays a big role in trying to make a deal. And that could be a lot of things. That could be interest rate, that could be amortization, a bunch of ways you can kind of work the numbers to make it, work in your favor.
Sure.
Yeah, as far as anything else, I would look at rental rates. I think most of us are pretty conservative as far as what we think rental rates will be. Once we get in there, raise rents, what market rents are. I think a lot of us are conservative. I'm somewhat conservative, but I run a good, better, best, to where I run my numbers at the way it's running right now. I run it as where I think numbers will be in 6 months to a year. And then I run it to where I think rental rates will eventually get to in 2 to 3 years. And then I actually figure 100% occupied, economic occupancy, as long as there's demand in the market. Because from what I've found is I'm collecting probably 90% of rental income, and the extra 10% comes from setup fees, late fees, auctions, all that stuff. It's still icing on the cake. But if I'm comfortable at 90% occupied, economic occupancy, I'll run my numbers at 100% to see where it's at or where it can get to.
Yeah, sure. The other thing I wanted to touch on, well, a couple things. As far as price goes, I know there's investors out there who look at a property and they figure out what it's worth and what the seller wants for it, and they know that based on what the seller wants, it's not a great deal. But one of the things that and I know, John, you would probably say the same thing, is encourage people to do, which is, all right, it's not a deal based off of what the seller wants to sell it for, but what would make it a deal for you? What would you have to get it for it to be a deal? If the seller wants 700,000 for it, but for it to be a deal, you need to get it for 500 or 550. Offer that price, because you never know the circumstance or the situation that seller might find themselves in, where your offer is now the best offer, right? And I'm curious what else you might have to say about that, John.
Yeah, and I'm gonna use your example, and I'm gonna throw my seller financing piece into it. Maybe they want 700 and you can only offer 550. What if you can get to 650, but they hold a note, seller financing, for 100 at 0% interest or whatever you make it, and make sure your numbers work that way. But yeah, there's obviously a lot of ways to do it. That's kind of my go-to, is seller financing, and you can seller finance a piece of the deal or have them finance your down payment.
Sure.
There's just so many ways you can structure it.